Hello everyone, I'm Sneha. I'm back on my YouTube channel Storyteller. I was reading out to you a very good story. It's the story of a shipwreck sailor by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I will read out a small portion from the story today and I'm going to end it today as it is not possible for me to read the whole story because it's a bit long one, but I would really suggest you all to read this story, the whole story. It would be very interesting for you to read and it's a must read for all of you. So let us start with the portion. I recognized them immediately. Eduardo Castillo, the quartermaster, had a fawn grip around Julio Amador Carabello's neck. Carabello, who had been on watch when the accident occurred, was wearing his life jacket. He yelled, "Hold on tight, Castillo!" They floated amid the scattered cargo about 10 meters away. On the other side was Luis Rengifo. Only a few minutes before, I had seen him on the destroyer trying to stay above water with his headphone aloft in his right hand. With his habitual calm, with that good sailor's confidence that allowed him to boast that the sea would get sick before he died, he had stripped off his shirt so that he could swim better, but he had lost his life jacket. Even if I hadn't seen him, I would have recognized his cry, "Fasto, paddle over here!" I quickly grabbed the oar and tried to get closer to the man. Julia Amador, with Eduardo Castillo clinging to his neck, neared the raft. Much farther away, looking small and desolate, was the fourth of my mate, Raymond Herrera, who was waving at me while he held on to a crate. If I had to decide, I wouldn't have known which one of my mate to go after first. But when I saw Raymond Herrera of the Revel in Mobile, the happy young man from Arjona who had been with me on the stern only a few minutes before, I began to paddle furiously. But the life raft was almost 2 meters long. It was very heavy in that lurching sea and I had to row against the wind. I don't think I managed to advance more than a meter. Desperate, I looked around once more and saw that Raymond Herrera had disappeared. Only Luis Rengifo was swimming confidently towards the raft. I was sure he would make it. I had heard him snoring below my bunk and I was convinced that his sincerity was stronger than the sea. In contrast, Julio Amador was struggling with Eduardo Castillo so that Castillo wouldn't let go of his neck. They were less than 3 meters away. I figured that if they got just a little closer, I would hold out an oar for them to grab. But at that moment, a gigantic wave lifted the raft, and from the top of the huge crest, I could see the mast of the destroyer heading away from me. When I came down again, Julio Amador had vanished, with Eduardo Castillo hanging onto his neck. Alone, 2 meters away, Luis Rengifo was still swimming calmly towards the raft. I don't know why I did this absurd thing. Knowing I could not move forward, I put the oar in the water as though trying to prevent the raft from moving, trying to anchor it in place. Luis Rengifo, exhausted, paused a moment, then raised his arm as he had when he held his headphone aloft and shouted again, "Row over here, fasto!" The wind was blowing from his direction. I yelled that I couldn't row against the wind, that he should make another try, but I felt he did not hear me. The crates of cargo had disappeared and the life raft danced from side to side, battered by the waves. In an instant, I was 5 meters away from Luis Rengifo and had lost sight of him, but he appeared in another spot, still not panicking, ducking underwater to prevent the wave from swiping him away. I stood up, holding out the oar, hoping Luis Rengifo could get closer enough to reach it, but then I could see he was tiring, losing heart. He called to me again, sinking, "Fasto, fasto." I tried to row, but it was as hopeless as the first time. I made a last try so that Luis Rengifo could reach the oar, but the raised hand, which a few meters minutes earlier had been trying to keep the headphone from sinking, sank forever, less than 2 meters from the oar. I don't know how long I stayed like that, balancing in the life raft, holding out the oar. I kept searching the water, hoping that someone would surface soon. But the sea was clear and the wind, getting stronger, blew against my shirt like the howl of a dog. The cargo had disappeared. The mast, growing more distinct, proved that the destroyer hadn't sunk, as I had first thought. I felt calm. I thought that in a minute they would come looking for me. I thought that one of my mate had managed to reach the other life raft. There was no reason they shouldn't have reached it. The raft weren't provisioned. In fact, none of the destroyer life raft was outfitted. But there were 6 of them apart from the rowboats and the whalers. It was reasonable to believe that some of my mate had reached the other life rafts as I had reached mine, and perhaps the destroyer was searching for us. Very soon, I was aware of the sun. A midday sun, hot and metallic. 2 feet, not fully recovered. I looked at my watch. It was noon on the dot. The last time Louis Rengifu had asked me the time on the destroyer, it was 11:30. I had checked the time again at 11:50 and the destroyer had not yet occurred. And the disaster had not yet occurred. When I looked at my watch on the life raft, it was exactly noon. It had taken only 10 minutes for everything to happen, for me to reach the life raft and try to rescue my shipmates and stand motionless in the raft searching the empty sea, listening to the sharp howl of the wind. I thought it would take them at least 2 or 3 hours to rescue me. 2 or 3 hours, I calculated. It seemed an extraordinarily long time to be alone at sea, but I tried to resign myself to it. I had no food or water, and by 3 in the afternoon I would surely have a searing thirst. The sun burned my head and my skin, which was dry and hardened by salt. Since I had lost my cap, I splashed water on my head and I just sat on the side of the raft waiting to be rescued. It was only then that I felt the pain in my right knee. The thick blue drill fabric of my trouser leg was wet, so I had a hard time rolling it up. But when I did, I was startled. I saw a deep half-moon shaped wound on the lower part of my knee. I didn't know if I had gashed it on the side of the ship or if it had happened when I hit the water, for I did not notice it until I was seated in the life raft. Through the wound burned a little, I had stopped bleeding and was completely dry because of the salt water, I imagine. Uncertain as to what to do, I decided to make an inventory of my belongings. I wanted to figure out what I could count on in my solitude at sea. First of all, I could rely on my watch, which kept perfect time and which I couldn't stop glancing at every 2 or 3 minutes. In addition, I had my gold ring, which I had bought in Cartagena the year before, and a chain with a medal of Virgin of Carmen on it, also purchased in Cartagena from another seller for 35 pesos. In my pockets, I had nothing but the key to my locker on the destroyer and 3 business cards I had been given at a store in Mobile one day in January when I had gone out shopping with Mary address. Since I had nothing to do, I read the cards over and over to distract myself until I was rescued. I don't know why the cards seemed like the message in bottle that shipwreck sailor pinched into the sea. I think if I had a bottle at that moment, I would have put one of the cards into it, playing shipwreck sailor just to do something amusing to tell my friends about in Cartagena. So this is the end of my storytelling, but it is not the end of this story. I would really suggest you to read this book. It is absolutely not possible for me to continue with it. I'll be coming up with much more interesting short stories in my next video. Till then, listen to all the parts of this storytelling. The links of all the parts will be there in the description box below. You can also visit my YouTube channel and you can listen to all my previous stories. So keep listening stories and thank you.